Hi everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Instagram, on Twitter, on Pinterest, on a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. So I'm so excited to be sharing a few lesson ideas this week. I'm going to focus mostly on second grade, although I think that some of the things that I share about are going to be easy to translate either to first or to third or whatever, depending on how you teach it, what exactly you're going to do with it. So just keep that in mind, that you can translate, take, change, do whatever you want with the things that I share in just a few minutes. Before I get there, I know it's St. Patrick's Day week, so if you all are like, oh no, I need another game or whatever, I have a bunch of St. Patrick's Day stuff in my Teachers Pay Teacher store. I did a whole bundle of all the St. Patrick's Day stuff, and I'm also pumping Easter stuff in there because I know that that's like right after, like 2 weeks after. So there's a lot of Easter stuff that I've just added this week. If you're interested in any interactive games or centers or things like that for your classroom, I got a bunch of stuff in my TPT store. In this video, when I talk about things or I say like I've got a link for that, or here's the book that I use. If you're interested in any of that, I have a whole page on my blog dedicated to the links I share in these videos, in these weekly videos. So if you go to the bottom of the caption on Facebook or my LinkedIn profile, or if you're watching or rewatching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, there's a link in the description somewhere that'll take you to that links page, or you can go to my blog, makemomentsmatter.org, and find that. Okay, and then one more thing before I start sharing about my my stuff for this week, for my second grade stuff. A few weeks ago, I shared about an iPad stand and how I had like bought this tripod for an iPad stand and how I loved using it and blah blah blah. Well, of course, I left it at school the week I was like gonna show it off, so I brought it home, and the reason I want to share is because I have. In my search to do, if you could see my home office right now, it's like a weird rigging of like tripods. There's a ring light. There's like a couple weird like lamps in weird places to like try and make myself not look like a cavern troll on these videos, because like lighting is weird and whatever. Anyway, in the attempt to share all this stuff, I've like tried a bunch of different tripods or stands or whatever, and some of them have failed spectacularly, and I've sent them back. And then some have worked pretty well. And this iPad stand is one that worked so well that I bought one with my classroom funds to just like live in my classroom at school, because I have a teacher iPad at school, and so I like to have a stand because, well, it does a couple things. It means that then I can have my iPad. I'm not setting it down somewhere. I'm not setting on a shelf or whatever and then forgetting where it is. So if I have it on this like tripod stand, it can be right where I need it. It can be up in like my teacher space, or it can be if I'm at the piano or something, I can just have it there. And so it's nice if I want to swipe or click or do whatever. So like it's just nice to have. Also, it's really nice like right now, because what I'm doing, and I'll talk a bit about this with my second grade plans. What I'm doing is that I'm trying to videotape a lot of what I'm doing with my students in a variety of different grades, because instead of having like a concert, like a typical performance or whatever, I'm just videotaping a variety of different activities. I'm going to string them together in a video and share that out on YouTube with parents. And so that's going to like take the place of our concert. And so I need to video that. So I'm using my phone, and I'm also using my iPad, my school iPad, to do that. And so it works well for like videoing. It works well if you like need a place to just put your iPad. Anyway, all that to say, I've tried this one and it's not fallen over on me, and it's not flimsy. So I thought I would share it. On the back it says raking, but I put it on the links page. I actually have a whole page on my of Amazon ideas with like all the tech stuff that I use and whatever in my classroom, and books and all sorts of things. This one's cool. It has this sort of low stand tripod-y thing down way at the bottom, but it's still pretty sturdy. It's got three extendable areas. It extends pretty high. There have been a couple times where like I need to get the whole class, so I'll like set this on a box or set this on a table to give it more height. But for what it is and for how much I paid for it, it's not that expensive. The other thing I'll say, and I learned this the hard way, if you find one on Amazon, a stand or a tripod or something that says works for iPad or for iPhone, don't buy it. because I find that like the clips for these things, if it's like an interchangeable one, I had one where like you can switch out the clip for like from an iPad to like an iPhone or whatever, and they always like fall apart. I nearly broke the screen on my phone once doing that. So if you know one that's really great, let me know. But anyway, all that to say, this is the one I use. If you're interested, I shared links on my links page if you want. And I only brought it out because 2 or 3 weeks ago I talked about it and didn't have it. So anyway, here it is. It collapses down pretty well actually. So anyway, good times. Thought I would bring that out and share that. Okay. So this has been an interesting week. Apparently we're saving daylight now. So like, all of my students are like groggy and grumpy this morning. And like we just finished a rotation of specials rotation today. And then all the other districts in my county are on spring break right now, except us. And we're gonna have it next week, but not the full week. We're gonna have it shortened, and it's a mess. Anyway, all that to say, it was messy at school today. So I grabbed all the stuff to come home to share about lessons today, and it just feels like, Anyway, so I'm gonna try and share what is hopefully not craziness, and sort of give you some ideas that you might be able to use. Okay, one last thing. There were high school volunteers at my school this week, which like we haven't had all year, and I had laminating up in the front office, and one of the afternoon secretary was like, "Hey, so the high school started cutting out your posters for next month," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, really?" And so all my because I was trying to get ahead, and I printed out all my April posters, and so I only have to bring home like half of the set because some high schooler had done the rest of them, which is amazing. So they laminated and they cut out, which is amazing. But this is me trying to be ahead of the game, and I have all my April musicians already printed out, already ready to go. Yes, I just have to cut out a few more, and I'll be set. But anyway, okay, so I'm going to talk today about second grade. Second grade this week was sort of a weird hodgepodge because I had to do a couple things. There were some things in my pacing guide that I just needed to knock out. There are some things that I was like, "Ooh, I haven't talked about this in a long time. I really wanted to do." And then there was the whole anything I share this week, I'm trying to find a way to package it and share it with parents. So it felt weird teaching it, but I hit a lot of things in there, and so I hope that there are going to be some things in here that you could just take or borrow or use sort of in your own way. So all my students, when they come in, K1 and 2, they come in, we find our seating chart spot, they sit down, and then we usually start with some sort of echoing. For kindergarten and first grade, we do the copycat poem that I did last week and the week before and the week before and the week before. All year long we've been doing this. I shared about this last week in my video last week. But the little copycat poem where we do the poem and then I have them echo clap, or we do the poem and then we do some echo padding, or we do, it's back and forth and back and forth. One of the things I've done with second grade more recently is that we've added in about 3 minutes of solfege. Not a lot, and it's just I'll do a few, they'll copy, I'll do a few, they copy. I do a lot of it spoken right now because of COVID. So we speak the words, we do the hand signs, and they copy back and forth just so they're familiar with the hand signs themselves. And so we do that, and then we sing it. And I was really worried because we've not really been singing all year, and I was like, their pitch matching's not going to be good, and it's going to be weird, and it's trying to get them to singing voice. And actually it was okay. I was a little nervous because there are some kids who would try to be funny or use a silly voice or whatever, and it's always a trick of the tricky guess of are they doing that to be silly, or do they really not know? Has it been that long? So when we started doing a little bit of solfege, it actually was pretty good, and so I felt pretty good about that. So in our pacing guide, by the end of second grade, by the end of second grade, they should be able to use and recognize la, so, mi, re, and do. Cool. So on the first day, when we do our solfege back and forth, because we haven't really done any of this all year because we haven't really been singing, I just focused on So, Me, and La, where I would sing a pattern, they would sing back, we would use hand signs. And my thing to get them to do that is, I demo where they are, I show them, and so I try and give them visuals to remember. This year's been really interesting. I say so is up here by your mouth. It's sort of like a mask. It's sort of like where your mask goes. I used to say like where your mouth is, but now I can say it's like a mask. And so we'll do so, and me is like a table in front of you. It's where you're going to put your cupcake for later, because the cupcake is for who? It's for me. So me. So me's a little lower because you want it sort of down like a table height. So it's right here. So's here, me's here, and then La is like, if you do both hands, La, it looks like two eyebrows going straight up. So La's right here. And that just sort of helps them place like on the body where it is. And I say this to kids, but I also say to myself, like, So and Me and Ray, there's no difference in what your hand does. Your hand is the same shape. And so it'd be way easier if you could differentiate, like, So is flat in front of your mouth, and, Me is like a claw shape. Like, that would be so much easier for kids to see and recognize. So that's why I make a big deal out of, like, So and Me have to be in different places. You have to move where you place them, and Me and Ray have to be in different places, because if you do just a slight variation, or you're not very precise, it's hard to know what it is. And so I make that a joke for kids, where I say, what hand sign am I holding up? And they say So, and I'm like, really, am I? And I move my hand so it looks like Me, and they're like, oh, it's Me. Oh, really? And I dip my elbow and make it look like Ray. And so, like, anytime a kid answers and raise their hand and answers a question, I just sort of shift my hand a little bit so it could look like another sign. Anyway, it infuriates them. They think it's funny, but they don't love that I do it. But anyway, all that to say, like, I just move it a little bit to show how much just a little movement can change the sign, so that then they're more intentional about where they put it and how it looks. Okay. So when we're doing solfege, I usually do one hand, and then I'll switch and say, can you use your other hand? Oh my gosh. Can you use both hands? And so we'll do patterns back and forth with one hand, then with the other hand, with both hands, all just to get them familiar with it and to get them comfortable with it. I feel like this is a scaffolding thing, where, like, I want them with just these three signs, So, Me, and La, to be really comfortable with the placement, really comfortable with how it looks, with the word to automatically recognize. Because then when you build in more signs, it's not like, if you do all the signs in one day, they're not going to be as comfortable with it. It's going to be harder. I also like doing So, Me, and La first. I mean, at a young age, that's what it says in our pacing guide, but it also just sort of solidifies the pitch relationship and the interval. And so if you're building that in, echoing that, and then you add another thing, it's just a great scaffold. So we start with So, Me, and La on this first day, and then as we progress, you'll see that I add more every day, because again, by the end of second grade, they should have So, Me, La, So, Me, Ray, and Do. And theoretically, they've done these in previous years, but again, because last year, the year was sort of cut short, and I didn't teach at the school last year, so the year was sort of cut short. I don't know really where they are, so I'm just sort of saying, like, from scratch, we're just going to go from the beginning and hope for the best. Anyway, so they come in, we do a little bit of echo clapping and echo patterning, we do a little bit of solfege back and forth, and with masks, with my air purifier, with the air exchange going, all of that. And it's not a lot of singing. I'm not going to worry so much about it, but that's really the only sort of singing we do. One of the other things that's in our pacing guide is that my students, they are supposed to know the brass family by the end of second grade, which, okay, cool. So what I've been doing then this week, this rotation, is that I'm doing an instrument of the day. So every day I pull out an instrument and, I don't pull out an instrument, but I bring an instrument and share it with them, and then we explore a little bit. So what does that look like? Let me actually pull it up here. So in my PowerPoint for every day, I have like a welcome screen. I have like a couple different things that we do, and then I just made a basic sort of slide that says instrument of the day and has a picture. I just pulled it from the internet. It's not fancy. So here's like day one was trombone. Okay, so it's just my basic slide that I already did, because like at the beginning of the day we have me, little emoji me, right? And then I go through and I have just reminder slides to remind myself, like, oh, we're doing the copycat next. There's tabby. And then we do a little bit of body percussion. We do some solfege. I just took these from my Music Dots resource and pulled those over and put them in there. So that's for solfege. But then when we get to the instrument of the day slide, I just have a picture of a trombone. Usually when kids see it, they sort of like, oh yeah, and they recognize or whatever. And then I have, I pulled this from I made a resource several years ago, and I call it the instrument families. There are a lot of things in there. There's like a meet the families slide, which is what this is. It just has a picture of the trombone. It says the trombone. It has a little quick paragraph of what the trombone is, and then a couple sample videos that you could watch. And in this resource packet, I have slides like this for like all the brass instruments, and then I also have a whole set of slides where like as you're explaining what a brass instrument is, it's like a set of 5 clues to help students sort of differentiate brass from other instruments and other families. And it's really a sort of a critical thinking process of like eliminating other possibilities to make sure you know, is this instrument a brass instrument or not? Kids for a lot of times can do that by sight. You know, like once we've learned, like that's that lower level of Bloom's, they can be like trumpet, brass. But to begin with, I want, or if like they were to see a weird instrument they've not seen before, I want them to be able to go through the process to figure out, is it really, you know, what family is that? I've talked a little bit about this in previous videos, but like for brass, the clues are a conical shaped mouthpiece. It has brass tubing, a flared bell, and that bell is the only place where air can escape. It has 3 or 4 or sometimes 5 pistons or valves, and then what was clue number 5? Oh, made of brass, right? So all those clues are great, and then that helps them differentiate later if they like see a saxophone, right? Because it looks, if they just go off, oh, it's made out of metal, well, that's not a great clue, right? You got to take all those clues into account, and that's why I have to sort of figure out, you know, it helps them figure that out. But anyway, that's in the resource pack, and they're like worksheets, and there's a game and some other stuff in that resource pack. But what I pull for just this lesson is I just pull the slide about the trombone. And so it gives us a little bit of history, it gives us a little bit of context, and then I have a couple of videos. Because my thought for the second graders is every day I'm going to give them one more instrument. And so every day, if we're going one at a time, then I can sort of not really deep dive, but like help them see and differentiate between instruments every day so they can get a good understanding. They can see it. I'm going to pull video clues so they can hear it. And then we go with it. So I do have a couple of videos that I show with this. There's one, and these are linked on that instrument families resource, but there's one where this guy, who I think he's in a military band in like Germany. I've still yet to pinpoint exactly what's his story, but he takes a GoPro camera and puts it on the end of the slide of his trombone, and whenever he plays, it slides in and out, and so it changes the camera position. The kids think it's hilarious, but I have to make sure that I we talk about the slide of a trombone first before, otherwise they're just like, why is the camera moving around like that? But we talk about that, and then, it's really cool because then it shows like him, he sets down his trombone when he's not playing. So like, why are we looking at his knees and the ceiling and up his nose? Well, it helps them think about perspective and where the camera would be. And that's always a great thing to incorporate in your lesson about like the context and the why and the whatever behind a video. We do that, and then also linked is a video of it's sort of like a circus act. I can't exactly pinpoint where it came from, but it's a circus act for like a TV show in another country, but it has a whole family of trombones they're like 7 different sizes, and it's just so funny because every time a new one comes on, the kids are like, oh my gosh, another trombone. Oh my gosh, another trombone. And it's just sort of hilarious for them to see. But again, this sets up great things because then we can talk about how instruments come in different sizes. It's still a trombone, it's just a different size trombone. Or how big of a difference does it have to be for it to not be a trombone anymore? Like, oh, well, it's just a different size. It's the same thing, just a different size. Or like, oh, well, this one doesn't have a slide. Is that still a trombone or is that a trumpet now? So this video helps us set up, like, you can have the same instrument in different sizes, but if you alter it in other ways, it's not a trombone anymore. if that makes sense. It helps us talk a little bit later when we see like alto saxophone, baritone saxophone, tenor saxophone, or whatever. We see them in different sizes. Seeing the trombones in these like 7 different sizes sort of helps them with that process. And then you might have seen this on Facebook, but very recently there's this kid who he and his mom have like a series of TikTok videos, and he's like a comedian, I guess. Anyway, he narrates what his mom does with a trombone. Like he plays the trombone, and the kids have thought this one is hilarious. So let me just play a little bit of this. Hello. So this kid and his mom, they're on YouTube, and I will track down the link. There's a longer one on Facebook, but it's just this kid narrating his mom, not even narrating, just like playing the trombone to whatever it is she's doing, and you can tell she sort of hates it and sort of loves it. But they have a series of videos together, and it's really fun to see them together, and they're both, you can tell they're both in on it. So you, like, sometimes you're like, that was staged, and then sometimes you're like, that actually is probably her actual reaction. But it's super fun to see them together. So, and it gives kids, they hear the trombone in lots of different ways. He plays it well, sometimes he plays it not so well sometimes, but they see it in action, and they can see and hear. And that's my ultimate goal, is I want them to just by sight be able to tell me what it is. By sound, they can sort of get, the wah, wah, wah. They can sort of hear the sliding sound. That's important. And then they can sort of see it in context in different ways from different angles. And it only takes about 4 or 5 minutes to like go through, well, more about 10 if you talk about like from start to finish talking about it, if kids have questions. And then to see a couple of the videos, it depends on how many you want to show. There's an endless amount of videos you can show. I have 2 linked on that Instrument Families resource, but you can go forever with these videos. And then in the next part of the lesson, we start talking about, we sort of review the notes that we know. And my students at this point know quarter note, quarter rest, eighth note, barred eighth notes, half note, half rest. That's as much as they know at this point in the school year. And so we go through and we just do a little bit of reading. So again, in just like this basic PowerPoint, I have some basic rhythm slides where they just go through and we read different things, varying levels of a progression of varying levels of difficulty, starting with just quarter notes and eighth notes, then adding in a quarter rest, then adding in the half note, adding in eventually not a half rest. I forgot to put that in on this slide. And then we take some time and we create those. So my students, we all have iPads, so they pull out their iPads and we have these nifty little pens. Well, they're not pens, they're called crayons from Logitech or I don't know. So anyway, but they're little styluses basically, and we have an app that's free on the iPad called Sketches School, and we go in together and we make all the notes, and then I have them, depending on how much time we have at the end of that lesson, we just physically create them. I think that's important first before we start applying that, before we start using them in patterns, is to just make them first, right? And then once we've made them, then I'll start giving them some opportunities to write it out. So like maybe once or twice I will dictate something to them. Ta, 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 dee, ta. Or ta, ta, dee, ta. So ta, a rest, quarter notes, and another eighth notes, another quarter note. And so they write that out. And then I'll give them options. I'll say, okay, you can have 4 beats. You can choose whatever you want to go in there. Maybe you just do ta, 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 ta. Boring, but you could do that. Maybe you do ta-dee, ta, ta-dee, ta. You could do that. Maybe you do ta, ta, 2 half notes. They sort of boring, but you could do that. And we go through all the options they could do. I let them choose. But that starts with first reading, remembering them, remembering the function, and then taking the time to just write, to create them. Okay, let's make a quarter note. How do we do that? You make an oval, you color it in, and you add the stem. Or actually, I think I usually say oval, stem, color it in. Oval, stem, color it in. If we're going to do eighth notes, oval, stem, color it in, oval, stem, color it in, beam on top. We take the time to remember how to do that first. If you don't have iPads, do it with whiteboards. That's what I've done for years and years and years. I've never had iPads until now. So whiteboards work perfectly. You could do it with pencil and paper. You could do it with whatever you want. Then I always say either whiteboards or iPads now, because you can wipe and redo pretty quickly. If you have paper and pencil, it takes time to erase, or you have to give them lots of that. Or I just personally feel like it's a little easier with one of these other methods. If we have time at the end of that day, and I don't think anybody in my rotations did, because we just sort of extended other things. I have other options for what we could do that day. There was like a poison rhythm game we could have played, but we never really got there. But it's always nice to have those backups, because there's always that one time where like something happens and you end up randomly, your technology dies, and so what are you going to do next? Well, it's nice to have those backups. So I always have one of those that's sort of related to what we could do to go next. Day 2, we come in, we do body percussion, we do so, mi, and la. Again, we don't add anything new this day. We just do so, mi, and la. We just do different versions of remembering what it looks like and remembering how they function, where they go. We sing them back and forth. Great, easy peasy. Our instrument of the day this day is the trumpet. And again, I pull from that instrument family's resource, just the slide about the trumpet. We talk about it, gives a little history, it shows them a picture, and then watch a couple of videos. This time we did one of a trumpet player named Allison Balsam, where she plays, gosh, it was a couple years ago. I can't remember, was it Bach, or I can't remember what exactly the piece is. But she plays just a sort of traditional with an orchestra, beautiful sound. I love having the video of Allison do it, so that my younger girls in this class can see, like, oh, you can play trumpet. Sure, if you want. I feel like that, there are some of those instruments that are like, this is a boy instrument, this is a girl instrument, or whatever. Stupid. So I just, I try and find examples of all different kinds of people playing all different kinds of instruments. So we start with Allison Balsam playing a more traditional, like, orchestral or band sort of an arrangement. And then I show them a video of Dizzy Gillespie playing trumpet in a jazz style, and that's super fun to contrast with Allison Balsam. So like to see the differences, to compare and contrast. And we also can talk about like differing periods. So like Allison Balsam is a video in color very recently. Everyone looks like they're wearing like contemporary clothes or what, there are all these clues that like this happened in the last couple years. And then there's Dizzy Gillespie, where it's black and white video, and you can tell like by hairstyles and clothing, like this was a while ago. And so it's just sort of fun to compare those, but also to give them the chance to see a trumpet being used in different ways, and to see, we talk about Dizzy's trumpet because it has the, his very iconic like bent bell. Is that typical for trumpets? No. Or the way he's playing with his huge puffed out cheeks. Is that normal for most trumpet players? Well, for Dizzy Gillespie, sure, but for most trumpet players, no, it's not typical. So again, it's sort of just to compare and contrast, like, with the Dizzy clip, it's fun because you can say like, well, the trumpet is bent. Is it still a trumpet? Yes. What if we added like another bell on it? Would it be a trumpet? No, it'd be something different. Or what if we added a long slide? Well, then no, it'd probably not still be a trumpet. But to talk about what makes it a trumpet or not. And then after we've done that quick, a few minutes talking about the trumpet, we move on. Again, there's so many trumpet videos you could do. There are thousands, so go find them. But we just do those to sort of compare and contrast, and then we move on. And this was a day where I pulled something that we did before and sort of refresh it, polish it, and we record it to share with our parents. So the thing that we're pulling out, I did a lesson in December about using a song from the Nutcracker and a little ribbon routine, like a ribbon wand routine. And I got it from Artie Almeida in her book, Parachutes, Ribbons, and Scarves, Oh My, which is an amazing book. If you don't have it, it's worth the like $30 or whatever it is. I've used, I'm sure, every lesson in it more than once. It's a delight. So in that book, she has a whole routine for using the Nutcracker's Trepak, the Russian dance, and adding a little ribbon routine. I use it basically verbatim, so I'm not going to share it with y'all because it's not my lesson, it's Artie's lesson, but go get it. But what I do want to share is that I inherited Like when I came to this job, they were already there. These ridiculously long ribbon ones. They're like, I mean, they're at least like, well, at least 6 foot, probably 7 or 8 foot long ribbons. They are crazy. And they come in a variety of colors. So I've got like, I could track these down if you're really interested in getting some ribbon wands just like this. I don't know if I like them because they constantly get knots in them that the kids can't always get out, which is annoying. Christine, you think they're 6 feet? I feel like they're longer than I am tall, but I don't know. You're probably right. Anyway, so they're crazy, and they come in like all these colors, like 2 different colors of pink, 2 different colors of green. There's like orange, red, blue, and then, oh my gosh, check this out. I have 2 versions of the rainbow ones. There's this kind of a rainbow wand. And then there's this one, which like, what? Why do we have 2 different versions? But I love it. Anyway, they are really beautiful to see, but they get knots in them all the time. I feel like anytime I use them, I'm like for 10 minutes after the class trying to pick knots out because you know the kids can't do it. But also, they are a pain in the butt to store. So anyone else who has these, Christine, it seems like maybe you do. Anyone else who has these, how do you store them? How do you put them away? I would love to hear your advice / see pictures because I can't figure out. It's like, it feels like I put them in a can and I put them on the top of a shelf and it feels like Rapunzel because like the ribbons just like float down for like forever. So anyway, if you have these ribbon wands or other ribbon wands that you know and you have a great storage solution, please share those solutions with me because I don't have the solution. Anyway, yeah, pain in the butt. Okay, so that's what we did on day 2. And so what I did with that lesson is we did it like once to remember it. And then I took and I had like my iPad on one side of the room and I had my phone on the other side of the room and I recorded it. And that song is short, right? The Russian dance. It's not very long. It's not like an 8-minute long. It's pretty short. You know, it's just like 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the recording you have and how fast the orchestra took it. We did it once. I moved both the iPad and the camera, and we did it again. So then I should get 4 videos out of it, right? So we did it twice, and I recorded it on the iPhone. We did it twice. I recorded it on my iPad. I wanted to do that because I'm thinking that when I splice these together on iMovie, and I've not done it yet, so send me good vibes. But when I splice it together on iMovie, I'm just going to layer over the Russian dance song, and then I'm going to just pull video clips, and I'm going to try and intersperse different camera angles so that even if your kid is in like the back row, or even if your kid is in a place where like I didn't, you know, the one iPhone camera couldn't get it, you know, maybe the iPad will get them or whatever. So just trying to like mix it up so that like parents aren't sitting there not ever seeing their kid. So this is a great activity to do that with because it is super visually appealing with the ribbons and the kids are happy, you know, and it looks super cool. It's easy. We've already done it where I'm just pulling it back out and brushing it off. And then it's easy to then like take a couple different shots, videos, whatever, and then hopefully be able to splice those together with few issues. Crossing my fingers and toes for that. Whew. Okay, and then if time, again, reading rhythms. I had a set of rhythms in my PowerPoint set up to go so we could read a few more complex rhythms. And then if we had time, which we did not, you know, I always like having like, if we have time, and if we don't get to them, it's okay. But if we had time, we're going to do rhythm sticks. Didn't get to it. No big deal. Okay, the next day, day 3, again, come in, body percussion. We do so, mi, la, and I add in do. And that's always fun because we can talk about there's do down low. Why do we call it do down low? Well, because our voice goes low, but also it's low on our body. Why do I even have to say do down low? Why can't it just say do? And then we talk about there's a high do and low do, and we use those in different ways. And then I sneak in do. So anyway, we do that in different patterns back and forth. So, mi, la, and do. Nancy says, I bet you could store each one in a wrapping paper cardboard roll if you save a bunch of them. Ooh, like Nancy, like each ribbon gets its own roll. I've got like 50 ribbons. That's a lot of space for the ribbons, but it might be worth it. I don't know. It probably would take kids a long time to put them away, but I'm gonna consider that. Nancy, let's chat. I can understand better what you're thinking. Anyway, so solfege again, it's just a slight progression. We just do one more, added one more sign. Simple, quick, easy patterns back and forth. And then this is cool too because now they're going to get the interval of the triads. So sol, mi, do, and then with a la too. So they'll be hearing it more, they'll be doing it more, and singing it more. So that's a great thing to add in before you do any more. The instrument of the day on this Wednesday is French horn, and I love French horn because I played French horn in high school, and so I pull out my French horn, which I have in my classroom, and when I get really excited, I like step back several feet and I play like 3 seconds. And the kids are like, "Ooh, you're bad." I'm like, "Yes, it's been a long time." And they don't say that. They're very gracious, my second graders. But anyway, so we play. But then I have video examples, and so of course, I think in this week, I'm trying to remember what my 2 video examples were that day. One was a video example of someone from like a local chamber orchestra or a local band or something, where he explains and sort of shows off. There are a lot of different like local orchestras or local bands or even national orchestras where they have like an in-depth interview with their principal French horn or principal trumpet or whatever. This one was fun because the kid is sort of younger and really excited, and at one point he takes a French horn mouthpiece and puts it on like a hose pipe and plays that. The kids think that is hilarious. So anyway, so watch that. And then there's another one that like takes French horn solos from different pieces that you maybe don't realize are French horn or whatever, and it plays them. So it's like I want to say there's something from 1812 Overture. There's something in there. There's like Blue Danube, and it plays Ride of the Valkyries. Like a couple different French horn pieces or things that could be played on French horn, and the French horn player is like really super serious, but it's a silly video, and so it's a fun one to share with kids. But again, I think you could do whatever you wanted, but it's just my way to intro French horn. Okay, so we do the instrument of the day, we do our body percussion, and then again in my district curriculum, one of the things we talk about in second grade is that you can have eighth notes beamed together or eighth notes separate. And I'll tell you, this is the first time as my 10th year teaching, this is the first time in this district that I've seen do like separate eighth notes in second grade. I've not done it that early. Maybe all the rest of you are like, we do that in kindergarten, so whatever, David. But I've never done that before, and it's never been a pacing guide before. For me, it's usually shown up a little later. But what I think is cool, the way we did it this year. So like I have a little, I created a note neighborhood thing a couple years ago about single eighth notes. So I used that, part of that. The other thing that I did was we talked about how you can pull them apart. And so when you pull them apart, it's like you pull that beam apart and like it flutters down and makes the flag. We talk about how the flagged eighth notes can be there, and how you use them. But what's interesting is on the board, I'll draw out 8 flagged eighth notes next to each other, and the kids like it. You can see the confusion on their faces and how it looks sort of cluttered and it's harder to read. And then I wipe off the flags and I beam them together because they're eighth notes right next to each other. And the kids are like, "Ooh, that's so much easier to read." So here, I'll see if I can show you sort of what I'm saying. And as I'm saying, I'm like, this doesn't sound clear at all. But I'll show you sort of what I mean if my pen will work. Okay. Ooh, she's mad at me. Hello. Nope, it's not going to work. Okay, well, here, I got this. old school, y'all. I got my whiteboard. So I do the little note neighborhood thing. That really helps. And then I also just show them the visual of, you know, a bunch of single eighth notes next to each other. Right? I say like, okay, you got toddy, 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 toddy. Or we could do which one's easier to read? And they always pick this one. It's just easier visually to see. And so what we talk about is how you can have them separate. But when they're standing next to each other, it makes more sense to beam them together. So if you just have two next to each other, you might as well beam them together. But it's good to know that you can leave them, you can pull them apart as flags, right? Because, you know, forever my kids are like, well, you know, we got quarter note, we got quarter rest, we got eighth notes. Why are the eighth notes always together? Why can't you just have an eighth note? And so this just sort of shows them how you can do that. And the progression then is you can talk about in this lesson how they can be separate with flags. And then in another lesson down the line, we can talk about how they can sort of move around, how you can do like eighth note, quarter note, eighth note, or you can, you know, move them in different ways, and or you can pair them with other things. Later down the road, we'll talk about that. But in this lesson, what I'm doing in this lesson alone is I'm just showing them eighth notes can be separated. That's why you see the eighth note with a flag. And what I've found and what I'm valuing in this lesson is that eighth notes with flags, single eighth notes, are like everywhere on like kid t-shirts. Like anytime where they're like, music, it's a symbol of an eighth note, a single flag eighth note. That symbol is everywhere. And I don't feel like that the single eighth note is actually all that easy to use in application until a little bit later once they learn more. But if you use it in this way to like show them like, here's what it is, we usually beam them together, but here's what it is. It makes it pretty simple for them to use and to see, and they're like, oh yeah, that's an eighth note. And then later we can use more complex versions of it, but I just like them to see. So we talk about it, we see it in practice, I show them how we can either choose eighth notes, beamed, or flagged, and then we make them. So either with a whiteboard or with their iPad, they go through and they create basically just a quarter note. You know, we start with that. It's a quarter note, and then you just put a flag on it. And they love playing with the flag. And my favorite thing is, we talk about how to do it wrong. And so, you know, I show them a couple ways to do it wrong, right? So let me show you a couple what I use for my examples. Okay, so here's how you can do it wrong. Sorry, my light's weird. Okay, you know, so you start at the quarter note, and if you put a tiny, tiny flag, I can't see that. I'm old. My eyes are bad. I can't. Is that an eighth note? I can't tell. So if it's too small, it's hard to read. If you, okay, my first classroom, huge 10-foot bulletin board thing. This was what they had for an eighth note. Like straight, horizontal, out. That's what they had. Why? It was like etched into the bulletin board. It wasn't like I could pull it down. No. It was like, why? So I show them like, that's not actually all that helpful. Okay, so then we talk about, you know, what's a good way to do it. You know, to bring down, give it just a little curve. It's like a little ponytail, right? Fun. Or, you know, just a little flag flapping down in the wind, right? Oh, but a bad way to do that would be to bring it down and just do like, ooh. The flag goes for, no, you don't want to, the flag that way is too long. It's silly to show them that example. They love doing it once, and then they realize, yeah, no. But it gives them a chance to be silly, to say like, you know, however I made it, you know, did I make it right? It's fun for them to go through and try. So we spend time doing that. We make good eighth notes. I actually pull out, I did it like a quick, like maybe 3-second Google search to look at what eighth notes made by like famous composers or whatever would be. Or one day I did a quick Google search of like eighth note on a t-shirt, so they could see it in all different ways, that like they might see it on the internet, or they might see it in real practice, and then we talk about it and use it. Okay, someone just said, Heather Hardy, I always explain paired eighth notes as friends holding hands. Then they have to separate, and it turns into the flag on each that gets to wave to each other. Ooh! In non-COVID times, I have them demonstrate this with their bodies, where they stand together and make a beam with their hands and separate and wave that arm like a flag. This worked way better for me than any other way I've tried explaining in the last 19 years. No, totally. That absolutely makes sense. And in the note neighborhood thing that I show them, I'll see if I can pull it up here. if I can find it quick enough. Yeah, let me pull that up. I just pull in the PowerPoint, the Note Neighborhood PowerPoint that I made years ago, and it does that basically. So like they had their friend Tilly. Gosh, let me just put it on here. Tilly shows them like, I'm an eighth note, blah blah blah. I've got the thing, and then it talks about how like Ta and D, because I use Ta D. There's another version of this with TT if you use that terminology instead. But I do the thing where like they are usually clapping, they're high-fiving, right? And then they can bring their hands down, and when they do that, it looks sort of like this. And then we talk about how you can make it look a little nicer and fancier. Instead of just like hands just like down, you can do the little flag thing, the little thing that looks sort of like a ponytail. And then that character sort of takes them through and explains how all that works. I've actually, because I sort of made this for a 3rd or 4th grade lesson, I've just taken those PowerPoint slides and pulled out the things I don't want to use just to sort of show them how it works in application in this specific setting. But it's actually, when I first saw it in the pacing guide in 2nd grade, I was like, I don't know about that. But now that I see how we can use it and how we can get it into their heads, sort of thinking about it, and then use it later, but like have it in their heads that it's an option now and what it looks like. And because I've always, before, like when it's like 16th notes, I'm always like, don't look at that, 2nd grade, we don't want to talk about, This is nice because now I can show them the 8th note, they can see it, they know what it is, they don't always know how to use it, but they can make it. We taught, because again, that's such an icon of music, it's nice to have them have that knowledge. Okay, my last 2 days are sort of brought together because again, this is something we do sort of for our concert. So it starts with our instrument of the day is the tuba, and along with some of these other days, you can compare them. So like trumpet, we compare to cornet or to bugle on the trumpet day, or on tuba day, we can compare it to euphonium and baritone. But I just sort of hit the big ones, and I know there's some other weird ancillary things out there, like I could talk about piccolo trumpet. Well, why? So anyway, so I talk about tuba this day. There's a really great video from the Minneapolis or Minnesota Symphony, I think it's Minnesota Symphony, where the principal tuba takes kids through what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it does. Love showing that. And then we jump to this story, Freedom Soup. And if you've never read this, it's a really cool story. And in the story, it talks about this girl making soup with her grandma, and they're making it for New Year's Day, and they call it Freedom Soup. And the reason they're doing it, as they're making it, they're talking about the Haitian music that they're listening, and the dance, and the maracas, and how they're tapping and dancing as they're making food, and how they do it. And my kids get confused at first because they put like pumpkin in it, and so we talk about how like pumpkin doesn't necessarily mean pumpkin pie. You can put it in a lot of things, or anyway. So we sort of talk about how they're using it, how they're spicing it, and how that works. And it's really cool, beautiful visuals, and they sort of talk about that process of making soup and what it is they're putting in. And then they talk about the significance of why they're making the soup. And they talk about Haiti and how people were enslaved and how the revolution came about. And in really simple, easy terms, they talk about how people were enslaved and they... their hands were tied, their spirits shattered, blood shed, freedom stolen, pride gone, and they decided to win back their freedom. And it's really cool how they juxtapose like retelling the story, talking about the story with pictures of like what that looked like in Haiti, the revolution. And then they talk about eating this soup to celebrate the end of slavery, eating the soup to celebrate the start of freedom. Hold on, let me go back because it talks about... Oh, yeah. How the slaves made soup for their masters, soup that they were never allowed to eat themselves. Freedom soup was only for the free. And so then they make this soup because they're free to remind them of their freedom. And it's just a really beautiful story talking about, freedom soup is for everyone. And then the family comes over and they have soup together. And, you could tie this really easy to talking about like, do we make foods for other occasions that remind us of things? And Thanksgiving is a really easy one if you're here in the States to talk about, like, we have these sort of traditional-ish things that you make, or maybe you have your own traditional things. Maybe like, you always make lamb on Easter, or maybe you always do whatever, you can make comparisons. But it's fun to compare what's happening in this story with other traditions that kids might also understand already. But this is just the most beautiful book. It has these gorgeous illustrations. The story is really cool. I also love that in the story is like as they're cooking, they're listening to music and they're dancing and they're sort of singing as they cook, which is so cool, normalizing that and talking about music outside of the context of like, we're using it in class, but like here it is alive in their kitchen as they cook. And it's fun to see like the intergenerational, but like grandma teaching the granddaughter and all of that. It's super, super cool. So how do I connect this? Well, in previous lessons, we've gone through and we've made, we've taken the food cards. I've talked about these on a bunch of other occasions. We've taken these food cards and we've made our own soup, right? We've made our own creation. And I shared last year this lesson I did called Everything Stew, which was sort of a Thanksgiving thing. Or you can do it peas porridge hot or whatever, where you take foods and you use those along with their rhythms to create a musical piece, basically, where I have kids string together 8 different words. That gives you basically a 4-measure pattern where you can go through and read the foods, you can read the rhythms of the foods, you can clap the rhythms of the foods. There's so much you can do with it. So with my students, what I have them do is that each kid gets their own little bag of foods. And so, tip if you want, I have these, I printed them, it comes like 9 to a page. And you get 30 different food words. So depending on how big your class is, you could take, 30 words and they come 9 to a page. So you could get like 9 centers, which each bag would have 30 foods in that bag, right? And you could make 3 sets of that or whatever. So you ended up with 27 bags, right? You could do that, where each bag has 30 foods. Or you could take the 30 foods and make 3 bags out of it where you have 10 foods in each bag. Or you do 2 bags where you have 15 foods in each bag, if that makes sense. So like instead of giving one kid this set of 30 words, I like pull it apart and now I have 2 bags, one of 15, one of 15. That way I'm not making as many centers in this crazy year where each kid has to have their own bag, right? I'm not making as many, whereas normally in a normal year I'd have kids like share a bag and work together or whatever, but I'm not doing that. So I can pull it apart. That's a way to sort of stretch your resources so you're not making as much stuff. But anyway, we take these rhythms and these foods and we make our own little soup. And the cool thing that we can do with iPads, because all my kids have iPads, is I can take pictures, or they can take a picture of their own iPad and I can AirPlay it up. So what we can so quickly do is a little rondo thing where, we maybe have a poem about the soup and then we read someone's pattern. We clap someone's pattern. We, use rhythm sticks if we want. And then we'll do we can do a poem again. And then we go and read somebody else's pattern, do something else. What I'm having my students do, I'm having them take a picture of their 8-word pattern. I'm going to have that in the video that I share with parents. I'm going to put each kid's up. I actually was able to go along and take a picture of them working. I tried to get every kid so I can do a little collage and show that. And we're going to make a connection. We're going to show parents, how we read Freedom Soup, or we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm not going to read the whole book to parents in that concert thing, but we'll talk about it. I'll let kids share a little bit about Freedom Soup, or what, maybe I'll take a 5 or 10 second video of them saying, what's the story about? And we could splice some of those together. And then I'll share a video of them reading. I took a couple different videos of that. So I set up my iPad so it would just show the whole process, right? And then you can also take a video video of them as they're working, as they're moving cards around. Parents love to see that. They love to see the action of it working. You could take a video of them just reading their own rhythm. You could have them submit that. You could put together, where kids read somebody else's rhythm. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can splice together a video or a moment to sort of show the bigger process, things that parents would never see in a concert, and sort of to give them more of that, more of an informants, honestly, because they get to see what's actually happening in your room. And that's just with these food cards. I think in my TPT store they're called Rhythm Sort Fabulous Food Edition. But you can take that and run with it. Okay, cool. I have like 2 minutes. A couple cool resources I wanted to share with you. So one of them was, I shared a few weeks ago about how we used like popsicle sticks to make rhythms for stick notation, and you can easily with a popsicle stick make an eighth note, or sorry, 2 eighth notes beamed together. You can easily do that. You leave the note head off, right? Or you can make a quarter note. You can easily make a little rest. You can't make a half note very well. So I asked teachers at my school, so here, we could put this down. This is a quarter note, right? How do you make an eighth note? Or how do you make a half note? Because if you've got a quarter note, easy. You got eighth notes, you can put 2 more and beam it, make an eighth note. How do you make a half note? You can't. Because if you just put the stem, that's a quarter note. So I had teachers at my school save their milk, the little rings of their milk carton or their Gatorade or whatever. So now with our little sticks, we can, when we want to have a half note, we can put one of these little circles on. So these are free. I just let them sit in some bleach water for a while and sanitize. And now kids can use these for their little half note. If I lose them, I don't care. They were free. I told teachers I want them, and so I keep getting random bags of milk rings. So anyway, it's a fun thing you can do if you want to use sticks and sort of extend that into half note land. Another thing I wanted to share was I got this as a gift, and it was so in Kansas City we have this phenomenal group called the Fountain City Brass Band. They're great. They win competitions. It's a bunch of music teachers and people in the community, and they're wonderful. And every year they play at this huge thing called Celebration at the Station. They do a whole concert series. Fabulous. Well, one of the people in the Fountain City Brass Band is the parent of one of my students. And so she gave me this book called Amy's Brass Band. And it's so cool because in the front there's a little thing that says, to Mr. Rao and his PRE students, we hope you enjoy this book on brass bands from the Fountain City Brass Band based in Kansas City. So anyway, Amy's Brass Band by Amy Shoemaker Bliss, illustrated by Allie Geddert, and it goes through and talks about what is a brass band and what does it look like and why did they start and where did they start and what's it all about, and it's really cool. It talks about the typical instruments you would see, what they call them. And some of these are sort of new to me. I was like, what's a tenor horn? Oh, it's that's a carryover from UK or whatever. Or why do they call them basses instead of tubas? Well, it's just, what they're called. And it talks about the conductor and what, in this version, what she does and what a pattern looks like. It just sort of gives kids a really cool vision of what a brass band might do. Sometimes they do things for communities. Sometimes they do championships or performances where they're judged. Sometimes they walk. Sometimes it's just small groups of people coming together and having fun. So it gives kids this sort of really cool view of what a brass band is and why they do what they do. But the typical instruments you might see and how they're sort of grouped together. Anyway, this was so cool because we had to talk about brass instruments and in second grade. That was in our pacing guide. And the mom who gave this to me, her kid is in second grade, so he's gonna see, we're reading it and he's seeing it. And then the Fountain City Brass Band has a version of a song from Hercules called Go the Distance. It's on their YouTube, and it shows them playing. So it's so cool because we could talk about brass bands. We've been talking about brass instruments all week. We pull up the video, and there in the video is the student's parents, and I say, hey, this is so-and-so's parents. So anyway, it's so many cool connections, but even if you don't have, a family member in the Fountain City Brass Band, this is a cool book. It's not actually associated with the Fountain City Brass Band. They just gave it to me. But you could get this book. I'll try and find a link for it. I'm not sure if it's on Amazon, but probably it's Amazon. You know, they got everything. But anyway, I'll try and put the link in there. But it's a really cool book to have. If you don't have any other use for it, put it in a subtub. You know, there's a lot you could do with it. But I loved pairing it with the video of the Fountain City Brass Band so that kids can see it. Okay. I'm out of time. I'm actually off next week. Next week is our spring break week, and I'm taking a week off, but I'll be back the following week. I hope that y'all have a great week, and if you have questions or comments or ideas along the way, please shoot me a message either through the social media platform you found me on, or you can email me at makemomentsmatter@gmail.com. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.